what's up guys, it's Mr. Winters. In this video, I'm going to take you through the safety on the bandsaw and the basics of how to use the bandsaw. So let's look at some of the parts on this thing first. We've got the table. This is called a miter gauge. It can be used to do miter cuts. It can be used to set up cross cuts and all kinds of different things. A lot of times we just move this out of the way unless we need to use that tool. This is the band of the bandsaw. It's called a bandsaw because if you open it up, it's basically one giant band that goes all the way around the saw, and when that spins, that blade moves. This is called the foot or the guide assembly. And this is your protection. This is what's keeping your fingers from getting cut. It's kind of helping that. As you can see, there's a finger sign. The rule is that you need to lower this up or down, and it should always be 1/4 of an inch above the piece of wood you're cutting. So let's say I'm going to cut this piece of wood. I need to lower this, and I like to bring it all the way down, touch the board, and then raise it about 1/4 of an inch. That'll keep your fingers from going in there and kind of just be a reminder to watch your fingers. You're also going to see red marks on this, and that's where you always want to have your fingers 2 inches away from that blade. So I've got 2 inches this way, 2 inches that way. Always keep your fingers 2 inches away from the blade and never right in front of the blade. Here's your on and off switch right here. Up, on, down, off. And that's everything you need to know as far as the parts of this tool. Unless you're using this tool does not have a fence, but it does have a table. So your board always has to be tight to the table. If you're using the guide, it would also need to be tight to that. Now, as far as what kind of cuts you can make on a bandsaw, they're kind of nice because you can do every cut you need to do. You can do cross cuts, rip cuts, curvy cuts. It's kind of a nice tool to start with, and you know, they're not very expensive. These tools are only about $200. So you can buy one of these and make all the types of cuts that you need to make. Okay, now for this video, I'm just gonna do a nice cut like this. It's kind of like a curved cut. Like that. Now what you have to learn about a bandsaw is the tighter this turn is, the harder it is to cut. So sometimes you have to make what's called a relief cut. Now this is going to be my good side. This is what I want. This is my scrap. So I'm putting an X over there. Now I know that it's going to be really hard to make this turn right here. So what I might do first is just cut that off. And then I'm going to use what's called relief cuts right here and maybe right here. And those are just straight cuts in, and they'll take little pieces off. So when you're cutting a sharp turn like that, you have to use relief cuts, or what will happen is you'll turn this board so much that you'll cause the blade to snap. Now as you're cutting, and little pieces of wood come off, kids get hurt because they reach their finger in there to clear the piece of wood. You cannot do that. You have to shut the saw off, wait till it stops running, and then move your piece of wood out of the way. The other option would be to have a push stick that you can knock the pieces out of the way. Do not reach your finger in there and try to clear a piece of wood. Now, one other thing I want to show you before I make this cut. As you're cutting on this line, if you get off the line and you're like starting to miss, do not just pull the thing back. What that'll do is cause the blade to fly off of the wheel and it'll all get jammed up in the machine. If you get off of your line, you have to shut the machine off, wait till the blade stops running, then pull your board out. So I'm going to zoom in on this and show you how I'm going to cut out this shape. As always, wear your safety glasses and hearing protection. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut this off to get a smaller piece of wood to work with. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is relief cuts, where these sharp edges, these sharp radiuses, or these sharp turns are. Now I'm going to come in on my line and start to cut out this shape. Don't reach your finger in there. Okay, there's the basics on that bandsaw. I got a lot of this scrap wood, and I encourage you to practice on these things because they are tricky to use, but once you get pretty good at it, you can make some really cool cutouts, like this cool deer on my shirt. You could cut this thing out and have one of those for up on your wall. Now we also have another saw in this shop right next to the bandsaws, and this is called a scroll saw. All the same rules apply. The only difference with this saw is the way you set up this guide. So when you're cutting on the board on this one, again, you have to be tight to the table, and then we have to lower this so that it holds your board down. So I just bring it down to where it's barely touching, and then I tighten this piece up. Now, this is different than a bandsaw because this blade just goes up and down. So if you watch, I'll just turn it on. So a scroll saw can do a lot sharper turns and a lot more fine cutting, but it's very similar to a bandsaw. I'm gonna do another example right here for you just to see how this saw works, and I'm just gonna cut like down like this. Something like that. This is gonna be my scrap. That's my good side. So first, I'm going to make relief cuts right to there, into there, and right there. So I'm going to make those relief cuts first. Now this little hose right here is kind of cool because it blows the sawdust out of the way. I'm just going to point it down in there so it's blowing the sawdust out of my way. Got my safety glasses on. I got my hearing protection on. And other than that, the same rules apply. Now, as you can see, that blade is a lot smaller and a lot more fine than the bandsaw. So again, a scroll saw will do a lot smaller, finer cuts compared to a bandsaw. So there's my relief cut. There's one, and one. Now I'm going to follow this line and cut the rest of that shape out. Notice how I put my hand behind it so I'm away from the blade. Now don't reach your finger in there, just move it out of the way. You can even use your breath and blow it out of the way. Okay, there you go. All right, so that's how you use a bandsaw and a scroll saw. And once you get really good at using these things, you can cut out all kinds of cool pieces like these. I got a cool little deer head. We've got the Browning symbol. And there's a little lake trout that I cut out using the scroll saw. So again, the scroll saw will do more fine cuts. If you're doing a real small thing, you might use the scroll saw. And a bandsaw kind of can do the bigger cuts or the bigger pieces of wood. So they're pretty similar tools, and they can make all those different types of cuts, like curves and rip cuts and cross cuts, and it doesn't really matter. So when you're doing those cutout type projects, learn how to use the scroll saw and the bandsaw. All right, that's the safety on the bandsaw and the scroll saw and the basics of how to use them. I encourage you to practice and don't be afraid to mess up. It's one of those things that you have to run the saw a lot till you get good at it. Have fun, be creative, use these cool tools, be safe. See you on the next one.